patrons and subscribers, welcome back to the new show. I'm Random Rob, and today I'm thinking about comic books. What kind of comics did you read when you were growing up? For me, as a little kid in the early 70s, I was all about Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. And to this day, I still think the first appearance of Galactus and the Silver Surfer was one of the greatest narratives that came out of late 60s Marvel Comics. Especially when the Silver Surfer becomes cast out and ends up spending time with Ben Grimm's blind girlfriend who doesn't know that he's an alien, and they have this great conversation about the meaning of life and happiness. Which makes me think of those movies because, boy, Sony Pictures could not have screwed that story up any better if they had tried. But anyway, as I grew older, I became more interested in the fringe Marvel Comics. Deathlock the Demolisher, the Man-Thing. And when I was in high school, I fell in love with John Byrne's Alpha Flight. It was such an interesting departure from the usual stuff Marvel was doing at that time. But as I grew older, I moved away from Marvel and DC and became a lot more interested in role-playing games and video games. Although every now and then I would still run across an indie comic that would blow my doors off. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. 5 comics that changed the way I thought about comics. Without further ado, number 1, Nexus by Mike Baron and Steve Rude. This is the Nexus Omnibus Volume 2, which I wanted to get for a very specific storyline, which I'll talk about in a minute. I will say the Omnibus, it's a really nice reprinting, but the thing I hate about this is smaller than the actual comics. I wish they had kept the proper size of the pages. Nexus is the story of Horatio Hellpop, the son of a disgraced Soviet military commander. Sidebar, the Soviet Union is still super powerful in the universe of Mike Baron's Nexus. Horatio's father takes his family and flees after he is ordered to destroy a planetary colony he is in charge of. During their flight, they discover the alien planet of Ilum, which has beneath its surface an ancient space station stocked with food and water, and 2 ghosts of a long-dead alien species called the Merc, who built the station, who form a relationship with the young Horatio and tell him that he is destined to be the next great Nexus. And what is the Nexus? The Nexus is an unstoppable, godlike arbiter of cosmic justice. When Horatio goes to sleep, he begins having dreams where the victims of mass murders, the victims of military atrocities, beg him to go and avenge their deaths. These dreams are painful for him. They give him migraines. And although he tries to fight against the call to justice, eventually he realizes that it's just easier to do the work with the power that he's been given. And ironically, his father becomes the first murderer who he has to use his power on. The world of Nexus is amazingly detailed. Rude's art designs are a hybrid of Hanna-Barbera Space Ghost characters and Golden Era Jack Kirby. The space station Ilum becomes a sanctified refugee outpost for all the unwanted aliens who've been driven from their planets by war or racial injustice. What really drew me to Nexus when I was first reading this initial run was the story of how Horatio ends up killing an old Soviet general who had given his father the order to terminate the colony he was in charge of. After this incident, he becomes sullen and withdrawn and goes into an Elvis phase, where he starts taking drugs, he stops caring about using his power, and eventually Alpha and Beta come back to rehabilitate him and get him to use his power again. And it was really one of the first genuine comic book narrative I'd ever read about drug addiction and rehabilitation. And it was funny and disturbing and ultimately moving. He even looks a little bit like Elvis right there. Yeah, a comic book where an omnipotently powerful being becomes a drug addict and hits bottom because he can't handle the responsibility. It's really bold stuff. Number 2, Scout by Timothy Truman. Here I have another graphic novel of the first several issues. Scout was a game changer for me because it took place in a dystopian America, not unlike the Imperial America in John Carpenter's Escape from New York. Only in the case of Scout, the height of the empire was over. All of America's allies and neighbors withdrew from trade, causing it to go into an apocalyptic social and economic decline. And the main character in Scout, Emmanuel Santana, comes down off of the reservation on a vision quest to destroy 4 mythical monsters that have taken control of the country. And it's through prayer and taking peyote that he can see these monsters who masquerade as powerful humans. For example, the Owlman giant, who's a drug dealer and child pornographer. Or the Buffalo Monster, who's an arms dealer. Another monster is a vulture, who's the man in charge of farm subsidies. And the final monster he has to confront is, of course, the President of the United States, who's a decrepit, coke-sniffing projection of Ronald Reagan if he had stayed in office for decades. In his book, Native Americans in Comic Books, A Critical Study, author Michael Shayashe noted that Scout was a genuine and respectful representation, and that its tribal lore was well researched. Scout only ran for a couple of years, and while I don't necessarily recommend the entire run of the comic, I do absolutely recommend the origin story with the 4 monsters, because it's just such a prescient and angry look at a dark future America that seems a lot less like fiction now than it did 30-some years ago. Number 3, Love and Rockets. Here I have their first collection, Music for Mechanics by Los Bros Hernandez. Love and Rockets is a going concern. This comic started in 1981, and as far as I know was still in publication up through 2016. The comic is the work of the 3 Hernandez brothers, Jaime, Gilbert, and Mario, all of whom would share and swap different duties in terms of writing and drawing and inking. Sort of similar to what I mentioned about Nexus, the Hernandez brothers' style has a wonderful retro flair to it. And what really drew me to this comic was the portrayal of female characters in it. All of the main characters are women. They're all strong, opinionated, uncompromising. Gilbert's stories would focus more on the mythical village of Palomar, and often read like folk tales about life in a small South American town. Jaime, on the other hand, more about a retro urban future. And like the best fiction from South America, Love and Rockets is full of magical realism, and despite the more wild and out there storylines, the focus of the comics is always squarely on the female characters and their feelings and their sense of self-worth. Just great, sensitive, beautifully drawn. Number 4, Mouse by Art Spiegelman. I have book 1 and 2 here. Mouse was originally serialized in Raw from 1981 to 1990. It's all done in this very simple postmodern style. And what Mouse is Art Spiegelman's conversations with his father, who was a Polish Jew who survived the Holocaust. And it really blew me away because even though it's drawn in this simple style and the Jews are all mice and the Nazis are all cats, this was a true story. And it wasn't just the story of his father surviving the Holocaust. It was the story about being a middle-aged man and having no idea how to talk to or relate to your father. Because going through the Holocaust made his father a very hard person, an inaccessible person to him. It's about seeing the cost that those events have on somebody and how that damage takes a toll on a family. And it was the first graphic novel to win a Pulitzer Prize. Difficult to read for all the right reasons. I highly recommend it. And I saved the funny one for last. Neat Stuff by Peter Bagge. This is a collection of the early comics. Neat Stuff ran from 1985 to 1989. It had a cast of recurring characters, notably the Bradley family, who would become the focus of his later comic book, Hate, which I also recommend. Peter Bagge's artwork is very much a throwback to the psychedelic style of R. Crumb. Most of his stories are just outright assaults on the hypocrisy of suburban Americans. And it was in this issue, number 12. I can still remember my friend Paul handing me this to read when I was hanging out at his house years ago. And I had to get a copy of it just so I could have the story Merry Fucking Christmas, which I think is the best takedown of the holiday I have ever read in comic book form. It's brutal and hilarious. There's this great argument between Buddy Bradley and his dad about how Buddy knows that his father doesn't really believe in any of these Christian traditions, and his father admits he only does it to please his wife. Brutally funny, earthy stuff. I mean, look at Mom putting the trash in the trash can there. That's the look. So I'll close it out there. What are some of your favorite indie comic books? Or comic books that changed how you thought about the medium? Let me know in the comments below, and if you liked what you heard, press that like button and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron of the new show. I could use your help. Take care, and be excellent. I'll see you next time. The new show is made possible by generous support from viewers like Tony, Luz, Arnell, Skipnick, Christopher, Marion, Eric, and B. Thank you so much for your support.